Hello and welcome to my Christmas hiking adventure that spans 3 of the finest New Zealand Great Walks, namely Kepler Track, MILFORD Track and ROUTEBURN Track, all done in one go. I'm going to show you the footage of how multi-day hiking really looks like, what experiences I got up to there, and overall, why on earth to do them in the first place. So I booked all of the hikes half a year in advance because they are all very close to each other and they're in very high demand. Anyway, I started with the Kepler Track, which is just an hour walk away from Tiana Town Centre. On day 1, I got greeted with a lush fern forest, a cozy fireplace at Broad Bay campsite, and near freezing temperatures because one of those Arctic fronts got here just a day before my arrival. So I was wrapping up in my tent, listening to a thunderstorm and a massive downpour outside while questioning my life choices on the inside. On the next day, however, Lake Tiana turned into pristine beauty, which restored my faith in my decision-making. I even ventured for a short swim, since it was summer after all, never mind the actual water temperature. From Broad Bay campsite, I headed towards the Laxma Hut, which had a sizable but manageable uphill on the way there. Both forest and tussock land parts of the trip boasted beautiful wildlife and native vegetation that I just could not ignore. And look at the views near the hut. Laxma Hut is a gem of its own kind in regards of what it can offer. For one, it is relatively close to Mount Laxma summit, so I dropped my backpack there and made a round trip to the summit and back in near perfect weather conditions. It was quite chilly and windy at the top anyway, so it is still best to dress warmly. 2, there is a gen of keys operating near the hut, which is hilarious to interact with. Apparently, number 51 is particularly infamous for his mischief, not as if others are in any way shy of troublemaking. I have had some great time playing with this yellow-beaked youngster, who I was told was under 3 years old, and I had a lot of fun, and the game was called Get the Shoe. And he didn't get the shoe because look at this. Look, yeah! And 3, there are incredibly wild, lone and spooky Laxma caves nearby that got some blood pumping in my veins. I traveled around 800 meters deep into the system, adored the formation, and even managed to get lost on the way back. Goodbye, sunshine. So here the cave branches out. This is a pathway to the left. So I'm going to take this one, so I need to remember when I come in back to turn right. And down here, on our right, there is another branch. I decided not to go through there. It's probably possible, but you need to squeeze through again, and to be honest, I've already squeezed through to quite a narrow spot and I fell in the end. So I probably should end my invention now. Okay, we are out of the cave. On the next day, I was nicely reminded why I made a resolution of never ever hiking at winds over 65 km an hour. So the gale wind speeds of 70 km per hour were knocking me down and made me lose my footing way more often than what I was comfortable with. Thanks God, the ridgeline had a forgiving width, and the wind direction was blowing me into the cliff face, not out of it. The only reason to keep crossing in those frankly unbearable conditions was a promise of winds easing off and an encouragement from a ranger that we can all do it. It took me an hour of a dog's time estimate to cross that ridge, even though I usually beat the estimates by miles. So please be careful around alpine conditions in here, and do take a good windproof layers with you. Upon surviving the ridge crossing, I went through a long forested descent section that, to be fair, I failed to appreciate properly due to exhaustion from the winds up in the open. It is a nice walk, though, even when all of your attention goes to counting traps to figure out how close you are to the hut or a campsite. Watching back, I do realize how beautiful in fact it was. At ROUTEBURN campsite, I saw more keys warnings and more of those inquisitive troublemakers with their highly manipulative bigs. So this is my tent, and what are you doing with it? Trouble! And the second one. Why are you doing it? I'm kidding you not, I even had to poop with the toilet door open to watch over them as they watched over me. They really do remember all of the mischief they were stopped from doing, and they will attempt to carry on. On that day, I was taking off my shoes with a sense of trepidation, for walking across the ridge in such strenuous conditions could have easily ruined my feet. Thankfully, some preventative taping and possum fur socks kept the damage to the minimum, which I was really proud of. From ROUTEBURN, I walked a 20-minute side track to a waterfall where rare endemic blue ducks have a habit of hanging around. But the true reason why I stayed there for hours is because it was the only place in the open to avoid sandflies, not because of the ducks. The next day I was traveling through a lovely forest section that was drowned in the sea of ferns and featured some lovely river sections as well. I also have to mention that, in my opinion, Kepler Track features the most beautiful and iconic fern carpet. I also passed a big slip, which is really just a piece of cliff sliding off after heavy rainfall several decades ago. And I really love seeing landslides as an engineer. I'm not sure if for you guys it bears as much significance as it does to me. I arrived to Motorola Hut early and went for a swim in the lake. The water was as icy as everywhere else, so don't raise your hopes too high. But heading to the end of the track the day after, I passed a bog that had a sign calling out for appreciation for the vital role it was playing in the local ecosystem. The cool fact about this bog is that it was left where the glacier has melted and it doesn't have any streams coming in or out of it. If you decide to finish the trek early, you can cross the bridge across Waiau River and go to the car park. Waiau River, by the way, used to be the biggest river in New Zealand in terms of volumetric flow of water, but then people built the dam and messed it up with its flow. However, I would recommend to finish the whole loop instead of going to the car park, because otherwise you are going to miss out on this. And also on some amazing streams on the way, and the wildlife and the birds and all of the grasses and mosses and even more. So I really loved that last section and would highly recommend to walk across it, because there are very few people around and birds are far less scared of you than anywhere else along the track. Walking back on foot from Kepler Track to Itiano has an additional benefit of passing a bird sanctuary where many of New Zealand iconic birds are kept. They are all rescued from the wildlife, and you can see takahe and kaka birds there. The feeding times are at around 10:30 am, if I remember correctly. Coming back to Tiano, I had to buy enough food for both MILFORD and ROUTEBURN tracks because there are no shops in Milford Sound to resupply later. So next morning, I caught a ferry to the start of MILFORD Track and started the second leg of my journey, which you can check out in the next video.